Hi there, welcome again. Another instalment of the Investigating Business Unit, Unit 22, and we're going to be looking at types of businesses and scope and size for some of our A01 work. So really briefly, what we're going to do is we're going to get a bit of a skeleton idea about what this is. There is far more information that you need to learn about this, but my recommendation is that you learn what each one of these areas are, what type of business is it, and give a very clear definition. Use your textbooks, use any exercise and revision guides, any research that you've done of your own, but all of it will help you answer those things that you need in your exam. So learn your definitions, give examples, and try and come up with some comparisons as well. Now we have three main sectors that we want to look at, and this one starts off with that private sector idea. Now the private sector is a really busy, complicated area where people are primarily focused on making profit, as well as some issues around community and so on and so on. But the real main focus is to provide a really good, strong service that makes money. They can tend to be owned by individuals, or sometimes private individuals, or sometimes they expand into these massive businesses that you and I see and use every day. Then they start having boards and partnerships and so on and so on. So the first one we're going to look at is this one here, the sole trader. This one tends to be personal trainers. They also have things like massage and private physios can be branded in to the sole trader, and their sole purpose really is that there's just one person who is responsible for their own debt, and they are responsible for the running and the marketing and the promotion of the business and all those things that you sort of take for granted. The benefit of this is that there is only one person. There's one person who needs to be considered. There's no other reason for other people to be brought in and out, and they have ultimate control of how the business is run and directed. Now remember, we're primarily concentrating on the sports and leisure industry. Okay, so when you're using your examples, make sure it is linked in with those sporting ideas. Don't start talking about the shop down the road or anything like that. It's got to be related back to the sports and leisure industry. Next up, partnerships. This is where more than one person create a company, and with that, they get the benefits of having more people, more work to share, people to share the load of responsibility with, and also the idea that they can expand and move quicker in their desired aims and objectives for the company. They do also share the responsibilities, whether that be debt or whether it be the marketing and clear strategies that they have, but they always have that idea of being able to use other people. Partnerships tend to be 2, 3, 4, 5 people, and then after that it starts to expand that a little bit more. So next up we have this private limited company. Now apologies, I don't know what's gone on there, we're missing a D, so let's add that there to start off with. These private limited companies are made up of many companies such as gyms and sports equipment suppliers, and they are controlled by shareholders, a board of directors who make the decisions on behalf of the company and the companies that are involved with them for the shareholders, people who actually own the money and have given money towards that company. They invest it how they see right. They control the position of the company in terms of all those strategic ideas, and then they are only responsible for the money that is invested. If there's any debts or anything like that, these directors and the board don't shoulder those debts. They shoulder responsibility, but they will not have to come up with the money to produce any other things that might be needed from maybe taxes, etc., etc. It's important to remember that the private limited companies, otherwise known as LTDs, are still owned by private members, okay, and they have to be invited to be part of the company. This moves us on really nicely to our public limited company. Oh, pen's gone a bit wrong there. Let's move back here. Public limited company, or PLC. Now, the difference between the LTD and PLC is that the public limited company gets floated on the stock exchange. Now, that's something I want you to go and research. What is the stock exchange? What's it actually do? And it means that anybody can actually buy it. So, but look into it in more details. How does the process work? For example, a football club or something like when a company gets really big, they open it out so that shareholders can vote on how the business is run and get more and more money as an input that they can put back into the company and therefore generate more of a product. Find out what your examples are of these public limited companies. Look back. Stock exchange. Also, think about the shareholders and what their role and responsibilities might be. And then think about how the profits may go back to those people. What are the benefits? What are the pitfalls of a PLC? Now, the cooperative is the final type of business we're going to be looking at. Now, these are a group of people who are running an organisation for the benefit of the members. Now, most commonly, something like Wimbledon or Barcelona is owned by the people. It's owned so that they can get it run the way they want it to be done, and all those things that you might take for granted. So it's run in the direction maybe of the fan, thinking of them as a priority, and not of a board of governors or a private individual. So this could be done depending on the size of the cooperative, okay, the situation, i.e., is it going to be benefiting the community, or is it for essentially a load of members like a football club, or is it a social side, okay, where it is to help bring out, encourage sport or something else that might be happening in a local setting. Cooperatives are becoming increasingly visible in terms that they are run by those people who it is actually catering for. So, i.e., fans will be running a club, or members will be running a club, so that they have the company and those people that they're serving's interests at heart. Now, the one thing I haven't mentioned so far is this idea about liability. Now, liability is important because, depending on your situation, what type of business you are, you will be responsible for the debts and the income and the outgoings of money that happens in your business. Now, unlimited liability refers to somebody, an individual who is responsible for all the debt and all the money that is going through the company, and they have the sole responsibility. Okay, so I always remember it by sole trader, sole responsibility equals the unlimited liability. Now, limited liability tends to relate to the partnership idea here, where all the people involved, whether it be 2, 3, 4, they share the responsibility of debt and profit and then share it amongst themselves. So there is a limited amount, okay, of responsibility per individual. They share the risk, but they also have to share the profits that are made in that limited liability situation. So the second type of business we're going to look at is the public sector. Now, the public sector plays an important role because it's giving access to the people, and it tends to be broken up into two sections. Now, apologies for this, it's not quite as clear as you'd like it to be, but if you look here, the public corporation, okay, public corporations. Now, these tend to be some publicly owned company or a state-owned organisation, which then extends its facilities out to the general public. Okay, so these could be universities or schools, or even something like a company that is government owned that then has other facilities attached onto it. So maybe even the army or armed forces as well. The second area is this one of local authority, and this one might be slightly more familiar to us. These are the things like the gyms and the sports facilities. So for us in Nottingham, Harvey Haddon has got a really good example where it's open to the public for public use and can be done on various systems, whether it be pay as you go or a membership, but it is run by the council or the borough, even in some areas district or city, as they have an interest in making sure that the people that they serve have got access to these facilities. We talk a lot about the NHS and the strain on that. Companies, organisations and all these sorts of things are really looking into trying to improve the public health of people. The final type of business we have is the voluntary sector. So these are generally areas where people are trying to promote a sport or maybe trying to promote an activity, and it's done out of the goodness of their hearts. Okay, so there's lots of volunteers who come in, and think about the local football club or basketball club or dance club or gym club that you might have joined as a youngster. People give up their own time for the benefit to promote excellence and promote a love and desire to take part in sport, whether it be immediately or in the future. They can be ranged from anything from volunteers, as I've already mentioned, to the chairman or equipment manager, to the treasurer who looks after the money, or any other role that may be in there that might help out with other people. Now, other areas where people use this in the voluntary sector is to gain experience. So things like officials, coaches, so that they can potentially go on and become even better and more highly skilled at their job in the future. The voluntary sector relies massively upon the goodwill of people. The sport in our country wouldn't be able to function without volunteers going in and helping out those local small organisations that help promote sport. The next type of voluntary sector organisation is that of the charitable trust. I'm sorry that if you can't see that there, I'll write it again. These are consistent of organisations that are run as charities, so money is given to them and help raising money, etc., or donations that help promote sport. So we've got the idea here of the Youth Sport Trust and even Sport Relief, which is promoting sport in young people and the whole in adults as well, to improve their lives with a common aim to make sure that they help public health via sport. These companies tend not to use anything like have a special tax brackets and don't pay any tax, so that they can get the maximum benefit from the money that is given to them. We're now moving on to the scope of business. Now, what does scope mean? Well, it basically means where the organisation is in terms of a geographical area. Who does it serve? Now, thinking of both private, public and your voluntary sector, what do they do? Where are they actually working? So the first one we need to consider is this local premise. So your company, it could be a gym, might be just a local company based around Nottingham. That company will serve maybe 50, 100, 150 people, but will be only based around one particular area. So I've used Nottingham as an example as it's local to us. Now, obviously, depending on the size of the town or the city, will depend upon that locality. If you think about somewhere like London, which is massive, you could have one company that is based in the west of London, but then have nothing to do with really anything that's going on in the north, east or the south. So we may have to be very, very specific about talking about it being for a target market that is within a few miles of the business itself. Next up, national. We've got a group of companies that offer the same service, the same product or the same ideas all around our country. Now, obviously, we consider talk about the United Kingdom, but it could be the same for somewhere else in the world. Australia, America, Canada, France, Germany. They solely deal with their customers and their traders that are in their nation. So think about some of the companies that we might have. So at one of your previous videos, we talked about someone like Virgin Active. They are a national company that are now expanding out beyond there as well into international, but they predominantly have a national base of companies, gyms that are based around the country. So it could be something as simple as a shop or a service, gyms, or even something like a clothing line. Now, things that are changing in our modern society are things like the internet. So no longer do you even need to go to a shop. You could just go to the internet and buy something from anywhere in the world. So national companies, although they have some very, very restrictive criteria, can also branch out to other people around the world. The final area for consideration is international and multinational. Now, we do need to make a distinct difference between the two. International would be one country dealing with another country, just one and one. So let's use an example really simply. Britain, a business in Britain dealing with somebody in China, and there'll be business going back and forth, making it international. Multinational use would be where they use many nations, where they have lots and could be dealing with 2, 3, 4, up to everywhere in the world. Think of some of those international companies that you know. What are they? Where do they do their business? Why might they do business internationally? What are the benefits for it? We'll talk about that more in our own lesson time. But for now, I want you to try and come up with some of those examples of why international business is possibly good and bad. Now, linked with the scope of the business is the size. And that becomes really important because it depends on your operational needs and requirements. So we've got 4 categories: micro, small, medium, and large. Now, the size of the business is determined by the number of staff that is employed by the business. This has various knock-on effects in terms of the requirements, whether it be legal or whether it be something that is how the business is run. So things like HR departments and legislative law come into place. And these businesses can be seen, as I said, by how many staff are employed. So a micro business is going to have up to 9 people. So 9 people who will be there. That's considered a really that micro idea. The next one, small business, will have 10 to 49. As you can see, quite a big jump in terms of the amount of people who are actually employed. So from 9 to all the way up to 49, okay, there would be a massive difference. And things about how people are paid, how people are trained, etc. come into play there. Now, our next jump comes to the medium size of 50 to 29. And this is where we tend to see more PLCs and LTDs operating, because they've got that scope of bringing more and more people, maybe a wider range net or a bigger company that they need to employ more and more people. The micro and small businesses tend to be related to the sole traders and partnerships. And we can already see how we're trying to make links between the type of business that we're running, the scope and the size of those businesses. Now, our final one is the large 250 plus members, and these tend to be multinational companies. Now, if you think about some of these multinational companies, okay, something such as Nike or Adidas, for example, they will have hundreds of people working for them in various different levels, whether it be as a designer or somebody who's working in production or marketing, and those people will be responsible for their small area, whether it be in one country or whether it be in one area. They'll be responsible for selling or the paperwork or the numbers for that brand. Each size of business has its own benefits. Can you come up with a list of what those benefits and the negatives are for micro, small and medium-sized businesses? For now, that's it. Make some really, really good notes, make it positive, really research it and go away and have a think about how that is impacting things around you on a day-to-day basis. Thanks for listening. See you next time.